Putting news first, this is BBC World News, now presented by Shirin Wheeler, The Record Europe.
Hello from the Council of Europe in Strasbourg, and welcome to a special edition of The Record Europe. This was Europe's first political institution, and now it's its largest. Many see it as the guardian of democracy and human rights in Europe, the conscience of the continent. But we'll be asking, can the Council of Europe really live up to its calling? And also, is it tough enough on its own members, even when they blatantly disregard human rights and flout the values that they've signed up to? But first, let's take a look at how it all began.
The first practical step would be to form a Council of Europe.
It was a British Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, who led the call for a way to heal the wounds of war in 1946, to safeguard European unity by fostering human rights, democracy and the rule of law. A conference at The Hague called for an elected assembly, a European Convention on Human Rights, and a court to enforce it. And in 1949, in London, 10 countries signed the founding treaty of the Council of Europe. Belgium, Denmark and France joined the UK, alongside Ireland, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Sweden and Norway. On the border of France and Germany, in the city of Strasbourg, itself a symbol of post-war reconciliation, the Palais de l'Europe was built to house the first European institution. In 1989, the Berlin Wall came down, and after that, membership of the Council of Europe doubled. From the old communist empire in the east, new states and would-be democracies were eager for the status of membership. In return, they promised to guarantee human rights and fundamental freedoms. Today, there are 47 countries in the Council of Europe. The Council of Europe's completely distinct from the European Union, though all 27 EU countries are members. It's made up of the Parliamentary Assembly, the Committee of Ministers, a Secretary-General, and of course the European Court of Human Rights.
Because the aim it is to protect women, mothers and girls.
In many ways, the driving force behind the Council of Europe is its Parliamentary Assembly. With 318 members, the Assembly is made up of 47 delegations of MPs from national parliaments. It monitors whether the Council's conventions are being respected. It produces reports based on fact-finding missions around Europe. Recommendations are voted here in the Chamber and sent to the Committee of Ministers. The Assembly is also the Council at its most political. The report on illegal CIA flights around Europe by Swiss Senator Dick Marty challenged European governments and accused them of turning a blind eye to torture. John Prescott, Britain's former Deputy Prime Minister, leads the British parliamentary delegation here.
It's kind of European dimension to the politics in Britain. Originally I came here in about 1974-75, so I've been in the Council of Europe before and also led the delegation to the European Parliament. The Council of Europe and the delegates here exposed the extraordinary rendition, the moving of prisoners around, that no national parliament could get an answer for. But here in the Council of Europe they did. Parliamentarians from over 47 countries working together on conventions, on looking at the customs in our industry and supervising elections going on. It's wonderful work. I thoroughly enjoy it and so do my colleagues.
Prescott dismisses the accusation that this is no more than a talking shop.
Well, that's a common misconception, I think, and usually by people who are not attending here. But all these nations get together, something like 47 nations in the Council of Europe, more than there is in the European Union, and they come to certain agreements about human rights. You can't be anything more important than human rights.
But the real decision-making body on the Council is the Committee of Ministers. This is the voice of governments. It's made up of the 47 foreign ministers and their representatives in Strasbourg, the ambassadors. They meet once a week to sort out the detail and approve what the Council spends its money on and what it does outside this building. As well as agreeing conventions to bolster democracy, fight terrorism, trafficking and cybercrime, that also includes measures to promote sport, youth programmes and even landscape preservation. Some say the Council spreads itself too thin, among them Sweden's ambassador, whose country is chairing business here till November.
And the goal for presidency is to streamline the work of the Council of Europe more into its core activities, human rights, democracy and rule of law, and ensure that these areas functions as good as it can.
Focusing the workload is becoming a priority. The Council of Europe's not alone among international organisations. It's an increasingly crowded field, and Terry Davis, Secretary General here since 2004, admits that duplication is a danger.
I'm concerned about duplication for one very good reason. It's a waste of effort, it's a waste of money, and we all use the taxpayers' money. And so I do sometimes think that our governments, and we are intergovernmental organisations, I do think our government should be more clear about who does what. And there's a tendency to say, well, let everybody do it. Let them all do it and coordinate, have partnership and liaison. There's a cost to that as well. Sometimes I personally would prefer it if they would say, right, the Council, you do this, OSCE, you do that, European Union and the 27 countries that are members of the European Union, you can do that. Clarity would, I think, be very helpful in the interest of the taxpayer.
It's in the field of promoting the rule of law and democracy and protecting human rights that the Council's been most successful. Earlier this year, a convention to fight trafficking, and most importantly to help the victims, came into force. In theory, it'll mean all 47 Council of Europe countries are committed to a series of measures to protect and prosecute the traffickers, but also to provide basic standards of protection for the victims. Others outside the Council have been invited to sign as well.
We are achieving a much more attention for the victims, not only in terms of physical and psychological assistance, which they obviously need, but also in terms of having the disposing of, for instance, a minimum period of 30 days reflection and recovery period, which is absolutely the minimum needed for victims to recover and to decide what they want to do, whether they want to cooperate with the police and so on.
The Council of Europe's negotiated more than 200 conventions, international multilateral treaties. One problem, though, how to make sure the conventions are enforced.
Well, one could always wish for more clout, but I think we are rather well equipped when it comes to mechanisms to ensure that governments follow the recommendations from the Council of Europe. The monitoring mechanisms are making reports on different thematic reports on each country, and here we're all alike, all are treated the same. The court has a unique role while its decisions are binding for member states.
Since 1989, when the Council of Europe admitted